Hello, and welcome to this talk about places and spaces for women in film. My name is Julia Skott. I'll be your moderator today, and I am going to have to promise myself to bite my tongue and sit on my hands because I also want to talk so much about this, but I'm not here for that. I'm here for this amazing panel. We have with us Werlinder, an actor and musician who has worked, I was going to say all over the world, which is, I think, basically true.
In the Western world.
Western world.
You don't have a mic.
No.
In the Western world.
Yes. We have Melissa Silverstein, who is the founder and editor of Women Hollywood and author of the book that I think you have here, In Her Voice, Women Directors Talk Directing, among other things. We're very happy to have her with us. We have Dagmar Brunow, who is a film studies scholar at Linnaeus University, a lecturer in gender studies at Södertörn, and a programmer for Hamburg's International Queer Film Festival. And we have Anna Serner, who is the head of the Swedish Filminstitutet, and I just want to check that you've turned your mic back on. So we're here to talk about, I'm just going to scooch around because I feel like my back is turned to half of you guys.
Kan jag det så här?
So we're here to talk about female representation in film, both on screen and behind the scenes. And we have a lot of interesting different experiences and perspectives here. And we're going to open the floor to questions after the main discussion, so please keep them in mind until then. I think we might even have a microphone for questions later. Yeah. So I'm going to start with sort of an open question for the whole panel. Where would you say we are today when it comes to women in film? Like either out of 10, or if you want to give it a letter grade, or any other way you want to express it. Like what would you try to say, like, what is the situation now for women writing, directing, and starring in films? Or for that matter, for the audience trying to, like, how would you gauge, where are we, if you were grade it?
I would grade it in two ways. I think we're in a very exciting time right now when we have lots of new characters being seen on film. You can see that you earn as much money having female leading parts in movies, and that is a strong movement right now, I think, also with female directors and scripts, you know, about female parts. But if you come to percentage, it will be still a low figure because it's still, you know, in a bad shape, and that's why we're talking about it here, to change things. Yeah. So should I rate numbers or no? No, that's fine.
But I think it's really different where you are in the world. I think it's really hard to say that we are in one place. In Sweden, we have come actually quite far in this matter. And I've been traveling around, and when you count numbers, you come to Germany, for instance, it's just horrible. And then Sweden is much better. But in other senses, of course, we are back. But it's... I would be interesting to hear you two non-Swedish persons. How would you grade it?
It's bad.
Okay.
I think, you know, there are some really good discussions happening now, and I think that's really positive. But I'm gonna, you know, I have the Hollywood statistics, and really Hollywood's still run by these men who really believe that people just want to see superhero movies, and those movies are exported everywhere around the world. They make 70% of all the money that is made on those Hollywood movies are made outside the United States and Canada. So this formula is working, they're making a lot of money, and that's what they want to do. Women are having a hard time breaking in. If they break in, they have a hard time getting their second film. And they also do not get hired to make any of these big budget movies. But if you live in a place where you have funding, you have opportunities, and we just need to make women more aware of their opportunities, and also encourage them to ask for equal funding and to push the envelope themselves.
And also to remember that female superheroes can also be blockbusters.
Yep. Yeah.
On this sort of negative note, we're going to start with a clip from Misrepresentation, a documentary from 2011. So we're going to run the clip. The man who's going to run the clip just ran up the stairs, which I love. So that was cheerful.
I have to apologize to my country.
Well,
because that's
it's
all
not
stuff
alone.
from America.
Well,
it's not only the case in
fortunately,
America.
you're not alone in the way you treat women in the media. So obviously, this isn't only about film, but as you were saying, like film is one of the film and TV is one of the very big ways that we see what women can do, are allowed to do, are capable of, in these sort of narratives that become truth. So to change that, what would you say matter? Like, what should be the first step to get more women onto screens, or getting more women making films? Melissa?
You have to do both. And I always say this, a two-pronged approach. You have to do both at the same time, and you must push for more female protagonists on screen that have agency, that are not just women who are there as window dressing, that have strong roles, that have things to say in all these shows. And then you have to push for women creators, because the statistics show that when you have women behind the scenes in powerful positions, not surprisingly, they actually hire more women and create more women on screen. So this is not rocket science, people. This is like, hire women, you'll see more women.
I think it was Emma Thompson who said she was getting so many scripts where her part was to say to a man, "Don't go do this dangerous thing." And that was her. Emma Thompson was like one of the most brilliant. Anna, what would you say?
Well, I agree that you need to do both at the same time, but I as well believe that, I don't know how many of you out read the article in Svenska Dagbladet today about the French situation, where the female director, whatever her name was, I can't remember, said that I'm definitely not a feminist, even though that the French Film Institute just made a survey and realized that it's only about 20% female directors, and they don't pass the Bechdel test. And she was like, the Bechdel test, what is that kind of rubbish? And if you really think about the Bechdel test, and about that girl, the young girl that said it's only about how you look and not what's in your brain, that is exactly what the Bechdel test is all about. And when a woman, I mean, there are some women that are aware of a problem, but there are a lot of women that do not want to be a part of a problem. So they really deny the problem. And I think, so we need to have women in front of the camera that pass the Bechdel test, and then we need to have women behind the camera, and then we need to educate. And I think we need to get the awareness in the schools. So we really need to work on a lot of levels at the same time.
Yeah, I think the awareness is really a necessity, because I've worked with both women and men as directors, and I have also experienced this, that some female directors really don't want to be female directors. And in some cases, of course, I understand them. When they finally get to the point where they get to do that big movie, they don't want to be sort of the ambassador, they just want to be a director. But I can't see why you don't want to sort of give a picture of the world where women are also being human beings with more than one purpose in the film. But I must say I've had more experiences with male directors who've been aware of the problem and given me the chance to do really quirky, funny, alive characters who can be both the eye candy and angry and yeah, in different ways. But it's really limiting. And of course I have plenty of stories of scripts I read and parts I made, and in the beginning of my career, I was really scared of these kimono scenes. I call them the kimono scenes. In every script, almost every script, there's a kimono scene where a kimono sort of slides open when the female role just passes by a scene. And this is not one time. I've read it in 50 scripts, I tell you, and it's a kimono. And I read it.
Belts are very, very expensive.
Yeah, I know. And in the beginning of my career, I was terrified. You know, I came out being Swedish, brought up in the 70s and 80s from my dad, who stayed at home with me, you know, and I was like, what is this? Do I have to play? And then I realized most of those scenes are never shot because they're probably there to raise finances from producers who wants to see the kimono go up. But of course, I had but many good experiences. So I think it's awareness, but I think you're right. When it comes to numbers, women will hire more women. And for me as an actor, it's always being aware of course, the parts I take, but also when I'm in the situation, you know, that I could bring my thought to the parts when I can. When I got to do a very small part in Steven Spielberg's Munich, which is a really interesting movie and fun to be part of, and I came to costume fitting, and my costume was like a see-through nightgown. And I was like, is she a prostitute? Did I misread the script? No, she's Swedish. Was the answer. And I think that's also kind of a fun way of our reputation in the world because of our... but then, of course, I got, multiple layers of that nightgown. But I was still in a nightgown where the men around me, in this case, Arabic men, were like in suits and ties. And I did this because it was Steven Spielberg. And when I came in, he was really funny. He told me, this part, what it meant for the film and everything. We worked very nice for 2 weeks with this. And I passed by him after shooting one of these scenes, and all the producers are in a long line, monitors all over there, and then the writer, Tony Kushner, and everyone. And Steven says to them, I hear when I pass by in my little nightgown, and he says, I'm trying to convince Lisa that she's not playing the shabloon of a Scandinavian woman, but I don't think I convinced her. And then he laughed really loud. So, no, but that was a funny thing. He was aware of what, it looked like. He could
have put you in a different outfit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the consciousness, not making that comment. It's maybe we can put her in clothes. That would be the right move on that part.
Yes, you're right.
So ironic sexism isn't necessarily the...
No, I don't accept that. I mean, firstly, the woman in France, it's very, if you're the only one and there's not enough women and someone point blank asks you that question, are you a feminist? And you're like, and you're just, unless you're somebody who has that deep consciousness, it's like a really hard question to answer. It's like asking someone if in the U.S., whatever. I could come up with many questions that just like put you in a certain position that you cannot ever back out of. And so I have kind of sympathy for her. She answered the question incorrectly, though. She should be a feminist, but I feel like we have to also, if you're not a feminist, you can still be a role model and female leader on the set. We'll try to turn you into a feminist. That's kind of my thoughts on that piece. But I want to talk about the Bechdel test a little later, if we can.
Yes, I have it on my talking points. I have here, there's a quote that's been going around the internet. It's attributed to Shirley MacLaine, and it's posted over pictures from an interview that she did with Michael Parkinson on Parkinson. I haven't been able to find the clip itself to verify that she did say that, but knowing Shirley MacLaine, I'm pretty sure she could have said this. This is an interview from 1975 where she says, "It's really interesting now, Michael, what's going on. The parts for women don't exist, you might have noticed. I started to figure that out the other day, and I thought, what on earth is really going on here? And then I remembered that in the old days, the old days meaning the 40s and 50s, when the Hayes office was the censorship board, and you had Barbara Stanwyck and Joan Crawford and Katharine Hepburn playing women judges, women politicians, women mayors, women scientists, blah, blah. You were not allowed to play a love scene in the bedroom with a double bed. It had to be 2 twin beds, even if the couple was married, and regardless of what the scene was, one of the people had to have 1 foot on the floor. So what happened was, since they couldn't play any real good, sexy love scenes, they had to resort to giving women these parts that were sensational in real life. The Hayes office was abolished in the name of more liberal sexual attitudes, and the rating systems came in. Well, now, because men were running the studios, men writing the scripts, and men were the directors, they put us back in the bedroom, and we haven't been judges or politicians or mayors since. We can't get out of the bedroom now." So this quote is from 1975. So are things better now than they were in the 70s? And are they better or worse than they were in the 40s? Do you think MacLaine has a point?
In a way, she has a point, but then on the other hand, if you look at the films from the 1940s, comparing them to the 50s, the fact that these women in the 40s had such strong roles is very much due to the situation in the Second World War, where lots of women actually were on the workplace while the men were soldiers and so on. And then when the men returned from the war, they again occupied the workplaces, leaving the women back to the home. So that is a kind of interaction with the discourse in society. But if you go back even further, even more than 100 years ago, in silent films, women had an incredible amount of influence. They were producers, they were scriptwriters, they were actors, they were directors directing their own films that they'd scripted and playing the lead. And that was something that completely disappeared when when the studio system was so centralized. And I would actually say that what is really important is also to distinguish between Hollywood and Sweden, because we have completely different modes of production, of funding, of supporting directors. As in Hollywood today, it seems like Darwinism is still around. And in Sweden, we have a kind of funding system that stems from the 1960s, from a wish to celebrate national cinema culture and a more specific cinema culture, which is, of course, problematic as such when it comes to whiteness and these issues. So we always need an intersectional approach as well when we speak of women and men in the cinema. Maybe just looking at gender is not enough. We should also take other intersectional or other power relations into account. Films today are still very heteronormative. They are still very white. But I think to go back to your first question, looking at the way where we are now, I think especially in Sweden, we have come a long way already. Or this is actually where we can start the discussion. Whereas in other countries like Germany, it's the Stone Age still. But in Sweden, this is the point where you can start discussing, okay, what can be done institutionally to celebrate the variety that there is in society and all the talent that is out there.
Melissa, if you were going to, from your perspective, viewing the Hollywood system, where do you think we are compared to the 70s and or the 40s or 30s?
Well, the 70s, there were very few women directors. There were a couple pioneers of that time, and that was when women started getting jobs in the studio system and when feminism was kind of taking hold in American culture. So I think in the early 80s, for example, you see like Shirley MacLaine got her best role in 1983, Terms of Endearment, and Norma Ray is then, and Barbara Streisand made Yentl in 1981. I think the 80s in like incredible time for kind of strong female characters, and the word strong is such a, quote, strong female protagonists on screen in the 80s. And then what happened in the 90s, weirdly, is kind of women disappeared again. After Thelma and Louise and A League of Their Own, both Gina Davis starred in those, and she had an amazing career at that time. And then all of a sudden she was like in the nightgown, and you're just like, what? So it happened, women's roles started disappearing in the 90s as the studio system continued to rise and rise and rise, and the blockbusters. I mean, it's all about these blockbusters, and we can blame that also on Steven Spielberg, because in 1975, exactly that same year, was the year of Jaws. And that was the year they realized they could advertise on television. Once they started advertising these movies on television, it was over. And they realized they could put them on multiplexes, and they started building these multiplexes, because back in the day, or the day of the 70s, whatever, they had like 3 prints of these movies, and you would have to go wait online around the block to see The Godfather, and everybody did it, so that was the thing to do. And then they started making more and more prints, and then things changed, and that was also the time where all these male directors started rising in the 60s and 70s, the auteur. I fucking hate that word so much, because it's like all these men are allowed to be this thing, and women, like, they never give it to women. You cannot be that. It is almost genderized term.
I just have to tell you, because I had a meeting with the distributors in Sweden last week. It was a horrible meeting, because, the distributors are the ones that really have the power. To get a film out to the audience, you need to have a distributor. To get funding from us, you need to have a distributor. If we want to be shown in the theaters, you need to have a distributor. So they have a lot of power, and we were sitting there with a lot of female directors and asking these powerful distributors what kind of power they had. And I was like, where are the producers? And it's like, we had another meeting with the producers. Now we have a meeting with you because you have power. And they were only, but we only get what the producers actually give us. We don't have any power. And then one of the really strong distributors, who is more into art house films, he was saying, I have such a good situation that I only go for quality. That's the only thing I go for. And it turns out it's 50-50. And he's not a powerful man regarding finances, but the financing guys, one from the US right holders, They were like, oh, okay, yeah, but we only go for stories. We don't see quality. We only go for the stories. And then they said, yeah, but that's easy for you. You only have the girls that are the auteurs. I mean, the auteurs, that's 50-50. But if you want to do a blockbuster, they don't have any experience. So suddenly, you are allowed to be an auteur as a woman, and that means you get small budgets. And then if you want the big budgets, then it's only men. So it was really, yes.
Because men are born with a genetic capability to create blockbusters. They don't need to practice. They just land there.
But as they are not aware, and none of them were actually, well, one was, but with no power, but the other ones were so without awareness that they don't even go that far in reflecting on how they make decisions, because it turned out they didn't make decisions. They only took what they got. So somebody else made the decisions. Bad them. But look at me. So that's right with the Spielberg. It's easy to make fun of others, but what do I do with my power?
It's all about awareness, I think, and what Bio Rio and WIFT, I'm on the board for WIFT Sweden, and Rättviseförmedlingen, what are they called in English?
The Equalisters.
The Equalisters. We founded this A label in the fall, which is built on the Bechdel test that you wanted to talk more about. And I think that's a way of making the audience aware of how seldom we see two women actually discussing something with each other, there's other than men on film. And that awareness, I think, will approach, distributors as well as producers. I hope so. It's very simple. It's very... I wanted to ask you something. How is television changing? Because I had the experience that, American television now, because we're exploding with series that people love to follow and see, and also with distribution, because I was thinking about Netflix producing their own series with House of Cards.
And Orange is the New Black.
Yeah, and Orange is the New Black. I haven't seen that yet.
Better than House of Cards, by the way.
But yes. I was thinking about House of Cards because I think they made an effort there of putting, people, there are female parts that are quite powerful. It's of course very sexualized to bring audience, but I think you see more male upper bodies than female there. I don't know. But there's also, you have this Indian guy, you have this, you could see that they've actually made an effort of putting a variety of voices. And what do you think about that? Because you're
stopped
American.
watching season 2 because I just can't stand them.
Okay.
And that's
because they're so
that's
cruel.
Me. I just, you only have a finite amount of time in the day. And do I want to watch people who are so hateful? That's kind of my personal opinion. But television is still 25% producers, women, 25% creators. And a great example that I've been, Shonda Rhimes, you guys know who Shonda Rhimes is? Grey's Anatomy, Scandal, all that stuff. Firstly, the woman has revolutionized television in the US. Color and the amount of women that she hires. I kind of watch, the credits. And in the US, the word producer on television is a writer. And there are like 10 writers on every television show. So it's like producer, supervising producer, consulting producer, executive producer, and then, you have like 5 executive producers at the end, and those are the kind of like, and then there's the person, the last one is the creator showrunner. And so you have, like 10 women, like equal writing room, and they spend, the whole day in the writing room and they do stuff. And what happens in TV is the director gets jobbed in. So the director is a whole different kind of feeling in the US TV industry. They still don't hire any women. It's like less than 10%. But Shonda Rhimes hires women, and also Callie Curry now, who wrote Thelma and Louise, has a television show. And in her first season, she hired like 20 episodes, she hired like 8 women. The lead actress in the show, she's like, I've never seen this before. And Callie Curry, and she says, fantastic. Callie Curry says, I hire the right people. It's not, and women can be the right people. You just have to have that ability. And that's what we need, more women to have those abilities to make those kinds of decisions, to say, this is who I want to hire. But I did have a friend who was also a showrunner, and she wanted to put half women and half men in the room, and they said, you don't have enough men. And they never say you don't have enough women. Ever.
Well, isn't there every couple of years there's a study that shows that if you have more than a third women in the room, men and women are going to think that women are in the majority. If women talk more than a third of the time, both men and women are going to think that the women dominated the conversation, and so.
But that's the critical mass, 30% critical mass for politics. I mean, the United States, they talk about this is political research. When you know, we have only like one powerful woman, you know, Hillary Clinton, and all they do is talk about, we used to do it when I did political stuff, feminist political stuff, hair, the 3 H's, hair, hemline, husband. Because when you're the only woman in the room, that's all they talk about. And then when you get enough of a critical mass, then it becomes, oh, what did you have to say again? Instead of like, you have, your makeup is bad or something.
So the question is how you get this critical mass, and because you jokingly said that men are born with this...
obviously genetically born with blockbuster making capabilities.
Exactly, as if they don't have to practice. And the important thing, of course, is to make people... to make it possible for female directors to practice. That is to make a second film. And there the numbers could actually be improved. So that is something, especially in a European context, that people should look at. And that's something that the Swedish Film Institute is working at right now.
I mean, these ladies are doing it.
But I mean, in other countries, that would be a big thing to do, just to professionalize on all levels of production. On the other hand, we should, when saying that, having said that, we should always say that there are lots of really well-educated professional women around in the film business, and it's the other thing is how is the money, the funding money distributed? Do male and female directors get the same amount of money? Because the other thing is that producers or the funding institutions often think that men are more able to cope with huge sums, whereas female directors might not. So this is also, speaking of awareness.
That's a lie, right? It's a total lie. that men can cope with the money, but they let women produce the $100 million movies. They just don't let you direct it. I mean,
and that was the difference from the beginning, when in the early century of the 2000th century, when the film actually started off, and the men were all concentrated on the camera and the lighting and the technical stuff, and the women got to do that sort of soft stuff like writing and directing. It was only when the money came into the business. So it's, but I mean, we have this in Sweden, the automatic scheme, which maybe some people know here, that we did not invent it. I want to make a point of that because people really think that we did that. But we have just to implement it, and the automatic scheme is for really commercial films. And funnily enough, it's only men that are being directors. And when we ask them how come, they say, but you know, female directors don't have the experience. They only made one film. They don't have the experience of having a big crew. And, you know, like you say, they obviously know how to run it like a producer, but not like a director. And then when we count, it's 40%, it's only men, but 40%, which is 2 films. So it's really, I mean, you shouldn't make any too much of a conclusion, but 2 out of 5 made their first film, and they were men. And then you had all the female directors that have made television shows, that have made fantastic films, and they are still not experienced enough.
Yeah, that's the next thing that's happening, which is now they really can't say you're not good enough. I mean, they really can't say there are not women there. So now they just say, well, you know, you kind of, if the film was good enough. And I'm just like, that is the next level of sexism that's coming in, which is kind of like, good enough. What is that? Or that means nothing. That means absolutely nothing except for the fact that we just want to keep you down. I mean, in this gender paradise here of Sweden, which I'm so glad to be in, I mean, the thing that, you know, firstly, to let you guys know that this stuff that you're doing here is making a, you know, it's making a difference. People are really talking about it, positively and negatively, but people are really engaged in the conversation about, you know, gender. And I feel like I'm in some way like Sweden, because I just throw out the, like, the, you know, the gauntlet down there and light the fire like you guys are lighting, and just let people kind of come in after the conversation where they feel comfortable. I mean, people are not always comfortable talking about gender in movies. I mean, the women who are directors, they just want to direct. They just want to work. I mean, and once they have to realize that they have to deal with their gender stuff all the time, it's just like, oh shit. You know, it's just like, am I not going to get this job because this guy who directed a piece of crap movie, they think that's a good thing, and I directed a good movie, I got awards, but I can't get my next job. And it becomes, you know, a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so we don't get those role models that we need for those girls to see, so that they don't have to think that every director looks like Steven Spielberg. Because that's what people believe directors are. And you can't be it if you can't see it.
That's from the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
No, that's actually not from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's from Marion Wright Edelman, who ran the Children's Defense Fund. But we've all said it, and you know.
But you also have to just remember that it will not stay unless you really have a sustainable way of thinking. I've been implementing gender equality programs for the advertising business. The day I walked out of the office, they throwed it out. And I know that is the case. So as long as you don't give it enough time and get your friends out there, you really need to network, and you really need to make sure that all the programs are very successful and everything, because otherwise it's so easy to blow out the candle. And right now we are lighted, but...
And we're half the world. I mean, this is the thing that is so crazy to me. I mean, we are half the world. Our stories are not valued in the same way as the stories about men. Women are, male story is seen as the norm. The female story is seen as the other. And it's like when you ask a guy to go see a movie about a woman, it's literally like torture. And we have to get out of that. I think certain movies now have made a difference with that, with Catching Fire being really successful, and Frozen, and you see boys twirling around thinking they're Elsa. I mean, that's a big difference, and everybody thinks that was made here. Frozen, because it's, you know, Arendelle, this fake place, and everyone's like, it must be Sweden because they're doing all the gender stuff.
And Disney is like, no, it's Norway.
It's like, it's a fake nice place where they have no gender problems. Anyway, so, I mean, it's just, it is one of these things where we just have to be constant. And we don't have a movement in the United States. That's a problem.
You're there.
Hi, I'm like, I sit in my pajamas and write all day. I mean, you know.
We come over
not
to
pajamas, sweatpants.
But I mean, it's really important. Like, I went down to Europe and I met with my colleagues that are in the other film institutes in all countries, and I had a workshop about gender equality, and they were like, first time I met them, I just started off my job, and it was like, ew. They were avoiding the question. So in the end, I was like, okay, talking about the guys, maybe we should talk about this. And I was like, yeah, but we don't know how. Yeah. So, okay, I can make a workshop. Do you want that? Yeah. And then I made a workshop, and they were screaming in the room because it was so frightening that I said you have to count, and you have to have role models, and you have to want things. And it turned out that they went out. The Danish guy, he said, yeah, I really look forward to Anna's presentation, and I will disagree. That was his, but he said it with a smile, but it was really, that was everyone's approach to it. And now I hear, like, my colleagues go down to Europe and meet these people that never gave me any feedback whatsoever. And to her, our lawyer, they say, oh, Anna, yeah, you know, she made me go home. I said, we have no problem in Belgium, in Eurimage, that is the European funding. We didn't have in Holland, in Poland. But then I said to myself, maybe we should go home and count. And we have such a problem. So, I mean, we need to go over and just say that critical question. Did you do your counting?
Over and over again.
Yeah.
We have another clip about female directors and the sort of struggles and successes. So if you can run that, maybe? If you haven't seen the whole misrepresentation movie, you really should. Also, A League of Their Own is a movie that everyone should see at least once a year, like I do. And I cry at least 4 times during it. So this is sort of about 2 things. One is, can men be made to appreciate women's stories? And then maybe another sort of inflammatory question, does it matter if half the people in a country, like if only the women go to see Sex and the City, could that still be, like, can we teach executives that that's still bankable? That's still 4 million people in Sweden, several million people in the States, and so on. So those 2 questions, what do you think?
Well, box office dollars. First, a couple on Catherine Hardwicke. She's in basically directing jail now. She can't get her next movie made. One of the most successful female directors, and is having a lot of problems now. So this is like an issue. And then what they like to do about women is they like to say that you're crazy, which is what they do to women directors to make sure that you can't get hired. And that list that Jennifer Todd talked about, I'm going to start carrying a list.
Yeah, you should.
Because Christine Lagarde, head of the IMF, said in a story I read this weekend that people still come up to her and say, oh, I can't hire any women, I can't find any women economists. And like, firstly, the gall to come up to the head of the IMF, say there are no women, hi. And so she got sick of that, so she carries a list in her purse. So I'm gonna start carrying a list of 25 women that they can hire and send it to anyone.
Well, that is
who
exactly
they want.
what the Equalisters, Rättviseförmedlingen,
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
When somebody said there are no female DJs, said I will take 15 minutes and I will give you a list of
Yeah.
50 people, and then they do that in all different sort of walks of professional life.
Yeah, I'm done with this. They're not qualified women thing. So that's my proactive thing that I'm going to work on right when I get home. What was the question?
Well, can men be made to appreciate stories about and by women, and also can we teach executives
right.
that clearly even teenage girls have money, in case they didn't know.
The executives are starting to understand that women have money. I mean, people who buy cars, people who sell cars understand that women buy cars. It seems that the Hollywood executives are these guys who are just stuck in this like mentality, probably because it's much easier to be stuck there than it is to like come out of your shell and think about that you have to move the mountain a little bit to reach women. And so now they're starting to realize with Catching Fire, Frozen, even things before that, that women do go to the movies. I have this presentation I do, and every movie I do just debunks the myth, that narrative.
Sex and the City, The Heat.
Yeah.
And
So, but the issue is with like a movie like Iron Man. Iron Man is successful because men and women go, and because women went to that movie. Sex and the City was successful because only women went. So women actually are the ones who make certain movies that they say are niche movies successful. Catching Fire is actually a switch because there was almost a little bit more men than women, and that's what they like to see now. They're like, oh, we could have, female protagonists because the boys are going. So the norm is the boys. And I don't understand how we got into that world, but we are really stuck in that world. And if you guys are anticipating this summer, I know 70% of every box office dollar is made overseas. Summer's now begins, in March, the summer movie season. Spider-Man's opening here next week. It's opening in London next week. And so you're only going to see male superheroes for the next 4 months, 5 months.
There's the Black Widow, and she's getting her own movie.
No, that's a rumor.
It's true in my head.
Okay. The Black Widows, I have no idea. But again, they say the same thing, which is like, will people go see Black Widow? I mean, if she plays Scarlett Johansson, maybe.
It's proven that men likes to go to watch female stories. The last couple of years, the last 4 years in Sweden, we have our own Oscar, Guldbaggen, the golden bug. Very.
It really is a bug, yeah.
And the last 4 years, it's been female directors that won all the best prizes. And I've been thinking about why. Why is that? And I really believe it's because there are only a few stories that you see in films. It's about love, it's about life, it's about death, it's about the big issues in life. And you've seen all these stories portrayed through a male perspective for the last 100 years. And then there are female directors telling a story about love, telling a story about feeling outside or alone. And suddenly they feel new and they feel unique. And I think it's just because you didn't see that, you haven't heard the story told from that perspective before. And that is so unique that they are pointed out to be the best films of the year. And for instance, Återträffen, Reunion, which is about it's about a girl that has been really bullied in school, and they're having reunion. It's really a hard theme, and it made so many people come to the theaters, which everyone was so surprised about, because it's such a hard topic, and are you supposed to want to see that at all, blah blah blah. But I think they came because she just made it new.
A good movie.
Yeah, and I think they are good movies, and I think male directors are doing really good movies, but you want to hear the stories in a new way. And it's as simple as that. And if you do that, people come, men and women. And the ones that should realize that are the distributors. And I mean, because they have so much power, and of course the producers, but
so we're going to come back in a second to sort of success factors and what I call the sort of toolkit, what we can actually do in various parts of the film industry. But I do want to touch on your issues with the Bechdel test, because this weekend is obviously the A-marked, the A-stamped film festival or discussion weekend, and the A-marking is based on a film passing or not passing the Bechdel test. But I know that you do have some issues with the Bechdel test.
Yeah, I mean, I love you guys, but this Bechdel test stuff is getting a little tired because people are really seizing on it, and it is really kind of a low common denominator in terms of what we want to see women do on screen. Yes, we want to see women talk to each other about something other than a man, but we also want to see women in leading roles, and there are a lot of movies that pass the Bechdel test that, you know, women are not in leading roles. And I know that you guys want to also, it's not only about passing the Bechdel test, you want to have strong female protagonists at the same time with it, but that message doesn't get filtered back to other folks. So everybody's now thinking, oh, well, we only need to get women to talk to each other about something other than a man. That movie passes. Now everyone's kind of thinking, okay, how do I just get to pass the Bechdel test? What it has done is made people angry about the fact that there is no representation of women on screen, which is exactly what we want to do. But I want, you know, the next level of the Bechdel test, which is like, I want movies that have female-centric stories, and I want those women to have agency. I just can't get stuck on them talking to each other and having a name. So it's like, that's kind of where I am.
I realized just now when you were talking about Orange is the New Black that it's one of the few TV shows ever that would not pass a reverse Bechdel test, because the few times that we have more than one man on screen, they're talking to each other about women. They're talking to each other about the inmates.
Well, we don't need the reverse Bechdel test, that's called life.
No, but I mean, like, it's one of the few times that
No, I agree with
they're only... Yeah.
Let me comment on that, because since WIFT was part of launching this did you say A-marked in English or A-label?
A-rating.
A-rating.
Thank you.
Okay. That we discussed, you know, making a different kind of test, you know, a label that would have more of a quality-based stamp on it. But we've thought that would be, first of all, the Bechdel test, or Bechdel, people had a little view of what was going on there and have heard about it, and because of it's so absurd, you know, that films don't pass this much of female, you know, presence on screen, it made it easier, I think, to use that. We wanted to use that because it's so simple that people can't even be offended by it, you know, and it's really about awareness. And I think that if you see that, oh my God, so many of the films that I want to go see or that I'm seeing don't even pass this silly little bitty test from 1985, You know, it's we really want more of female presence on stage. So, and we've got a lot of criticism, of course, because, you know, it's not a quality stamp. But who should define quality? You know, and what type of role would be approved? And so I think it's a good thing that it's so simple and silly, and it's a very sad thing. And I must say, sitting here, I get a little bit. Because I seem to always look at the world from the bright side, and hearing your the numbers from the U.S. It's really, because I've read this article just a few weeks ago that they had research on I think 1,600 movies from 1990 until now, and it was that the films passing the Bechdel test actually made as much money or more money. More money. So I was like,
but they get worse criticism.
They get a worse criticism. Yeah. So what? It's the money that counts, right? Isn't it?
Yeah. So that is the quality.
If the money counted, wouldn't the things be different? This is what scares the shit out of me, is really these numbers that are coming out about. Thank you. That was weird. The numbers coming out about how the movies, that passed the Bechdel test, made 20% more money than movies that failed. Or actually, movies, we did it on our site, is films with female protagonists. So same difference. And I wanted to say, I think you guys are awesome. So this is just about how do we continue this conversation, because at least we're having it. And so, like after Bridesmaids opened, everyone was just like, oh, we're gonna make like 10, 20, female comedies and stuff like that. And then they have this thing called, Martha Lausen calls it gender inertia, where they just get stuck in trying to figure out, how to do the next one, because if you don't make the next Bridesmaids as good as Bridesmaids, then we're gonna regress backwards. I mean, this is the problem, is like, we can have 10 movies directed by a guy open on one weekend, and like 8 of them suck and 8 of them don't make money. But if you have 2 movies, one movie by a woman that doesn't good, then oh my God, I can't hire another woman because that movie didn't do well. So it's part of this kind of larger context of how we help create a bigger sphere and we change the definition of what is success. Making your money back. Hey, isn't that successful? But in Hollywood, all they do is care about like big box office.
Isn't that another thing people say, that true equality is when a mediocre woman does as well as a mediocre man?
Yeah, you read Women
But
Hollywood.
I realize, the Bechdel test is poor in some aspects at least. But what I think is, I don't really care about it, because I said, when the journalist said, have you heard about the A rating? And I said, yeah, it sounds great. That was in an article in The Guardian saying the Swedish Film Institute supports. And that meant that I was interviewed all over the world, like Australia, South Africa, like 20 international interviews. And I know that Ellen was like in, I don't know how many countries you were being able to talk about this thing. Right. And I think sometimes, because now we are in this wonderful gender equal Sweden, which is not really true, but in this sense, people here doesn't feel that, there's a lot of nodding here, so I think a lot of people here agrees. So we are very mature. But there is a lot of people out there that takes a lot of big decisions about film, even in Sweden, that still haven't heard about the Bechdel test. Still, when you say, do you ever test it? Did you ever test the film? They say, no. So it's, when we are sick of it, I think that's just a good way to say we should keep on communicating.
Absolutely. And you go, like even the film festivals, the big film festivals, they still don't have enough women, and those are the festivals that get you to the next level, that get you to the next level, that get you to the next level. Yeah. And we just need to continue this conversation. And quite frankly, I'm days, because I work for myself, I created this thing, I created a film festival about women's leadership. Some days I'm like, the bad news days and the good news days. I have a lot of great news days when I, come and hang out with people who care about this issue and want to see it move forward. And then there's, the bad news days where it's just like, how are we going to move the Titanic around? It's just going down, and is the iceberg is, there. It's just so, I don't have an answer, but we all are struggling to come up with these answers and to have a more just film and television business, because these stories matter. Our world, this is our world. This is how we communicate with each other. It's like our, things on the cave.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I am going to make you come up, all four of you, with some sort of answer. I've asked you for tools and things that we can all do and or force others to do and demand. So what are the things, if we're going to try and end on a positive, constructive note, what are the things that we all, as individuals and as a collective, need to do to make the situation better?
Make different films. We have just almost exclusively been talking about Hollywood and about commercial filmmaking, but there is so much more talented filmmaking around, like experimental filmmaking, incredible documentaries that are made, for instance, in Sweden, but also in other parts of the world. Short films are very important, and here we can actually have good possibilities of public service media going in, buying the short films by young talents, both female and male filmmakers of all ethnic and sexual identities, being screened and then helping them to get along on the way. That will be one option. Then festival programming, of course, is a very important thing. You were into that. Cannes hardly showed any films by female film directors. The Berlin Film Festival didn't show any lesbian films, which was a scandal. And all the other festivals show that this is actually, that's a lie. I mean, these films exist, they are out there. And maybe we should also focus on other ways, like web series as a way to promote stuff and turn those into films. That's what's going on right now, especially in queer filmmaking. Mentorship programs are very important, not maybe just to, and also ask young filmmakers, what actually do you need? What is it you want? What could the Swedish Film Institute or your National Film Institute do for you? Mentorship programs are great, but maybe you would like to meet international directors who have an own voice, like Andrea Arnold or Claire Denis, and who are not just doing commercial mainstream film. That would be some
that would be great.
I'll sign up for all of those.
I think, I mean, if your question is as well what we as individuals could do, that is actually what we all should do. Take the opportunity every time we make a decision to make a decision that matters. And I mean, I at the Swedish Film Institute and my colleagues at the Swedish Film Institute have a really big power for making differences, and we should take that opportunity to make the best decisions. And everyone can do that. When I hire, sometimes I fail because I'm not into every decision, but when we are making this Golden Bug Award night, I've told the event makers that don't come up with a music group that is not with both men and women. Just don't come up with it, because I will never ever take a decision when there is only men. And every time I hire people like that, or try to make my colleagues to hire people, if everyone that buys things from others make that kind of decision, things will change. And everyone, of course, in the film business should do that. But as every one of us, as individuals, have a lot of power.
You know, I say to people, go and see a movie directed by women. Hi, that's not that hard. Go and see a movie about women. Own it. Use your dollar as like your vote. It matters. Also, if you're planning things, like Anna said, if you're doing a jury, if you're doing a panel or anything, I know we're all girls here, but you know, don't have all women, sorry. You know, don't have only, men on your panel, and be a role model. And hire women.
Well, you took my word there. You're all saying, because it's all about role models, and I think we all could be role models in whatever part we are working with. I mean, in our job, in front of or in back of the camera, and producing, and in media, and we all have to be role models as an audience. You know, when we go to the movies, where do you spend your money? I mean, money talks. And when I get roles, sometimes I choose to, because I want to work, and because sometimes it's an interesting topic, and I would still play, you know, a typical blonde girl from Sweden, and then I would still, you know, make a little twist, or you know, if I'm on the front of a TV magazine and they want to undress me, I know I have a lot of young girls as my fans. Now I say you can't unzip me down to here. I'm a role model, you know, and I want to show that women are more than what you want to bring us to. And what Anna is doing here is something fantastic, and we have all these young, amazing female directors who've done so many interesting movies the last few years, and that's role models. I think the new generation now will see that, you know, I can make a movie, you know, she did. And I'm also a musician, and when I released my album and I was going on tour, I realized that because I've been playing, you know, with just musicians coming along, there were only men on my album, except for the string quartets. And so I decided when I went on tour, you know, I'm not going to stand there singing with only male musicians. I can't do that in front of my brother's children, and you know, I have to be a role model. And people said you can't find anyone who plays as good as the guys. And so I made up my own list, about 15 piano players that I always, you know, have. Because I'm also a musician, you know, it's just role models all the time. And yeah, like the Swedish, you know, am I talking too long? No. There was this, what's it called, field and track? Is that friidrott?
Yeah, track and field.
Track and field, the opposite way. There were no girls, there were no money investing in girls practicing field and track. And then we got all these world championships girls from Sweden, Carolina Klüft, Kajsa Bergqvist, there are more of them, you know, they won gold medals, Olympic medals. And now I know, because I have young girls and boys in my family who are waiting in lines, there are thousands of them who wants to do track and field and track.
Track and field.
And it's all about role models. They say, hey, I can do that, you know, and it's...
Even fake role models. The longest line in Disney World now is for like Elsa and Anna, the characters from Frozen. Like 3 hours people are waiting to see people dressed up as Disney characters.
And the dolls go for like $400 on eBay.
Sorry. It's crazy.
Yeah. We're also going to end on a positive note with 2 clips. We have some greetings from the US for this weekend and for Ellen, I suppose. So if we could roll the last couple of clips.
Hey Stockholm, hey Ellen. I'm Kate Kaminski, founder of the Blue Stocking film series, coming to you from Maine, USA. I hope you're going to have a great time this weekend watching some wonderful A-rated films. I first read about the A-rating initiative last October on thevelvetcafe.com, and I was really excited about it. Initiatives like yours and continued interest in the Bechdel test are paving the way for change. Thank you for fanning the flame of a cinema revolution. Skål. The Blue Stocking Film Series mission is to provide an exclusive venue for A-rated short narrative films featuring complex female protagonists. We believe female characters deserve to be portrayed in the same way as their male counterparts, as flawed, as heroic, and as capable. We're very honored to be the first US film event to receive your A rating, so for that, another skål. Enjoy the show this weekend. Hopefully one of these days I can join you. Until then, keep the faith, and please use your consumer superpower by supporting films made by and about women. Skål.
Why do I want more women in film? Because if we have more women in front of the camera, we'll have more women behind it.
Places, quite on set, please, and...
A rating, take 1. Action!
So Melissa, you wanted to...
Well, I just wanted to make sure that I thanked you all for inviting me and for the great work that you do, because you are inspiring people. And I know that I've had multiple conversations since you guys did this A rating. I mean, like, it's just made people really think about gender, and I think that is an amazing opportunity. So I'm really proud of you all, and thank you. Ellen?
I was at Ellen is the initiative.
Take a
taker of
bow,
this.
girl.
Yeah.
So So we have maybe about 10 minutes for questions from the audience, if anybody has any thoughts.
Many of us, as I remember, was very involved in politics too. And this question about feminism was also related to politics. There was this agenda of going against the Vietnam War, about gender, about homosexuality, men, women. All these questions were on the tapet, som det heter. And then, yes, and now, Anna, you were talking about this French woman, I don't know how old she is, this director woman in France, who doesn't want to deal with all these questions, who still exist more than ever today, I think. It seems like from how you're talking about it, and I think that one has to go on, that's all. One needs to keep going. I went to AFI, to the American Filminstitutet, and I got so disgusted of Hollywood that after 1.5 years I just came back to Europe again. I couldn't stand it. Really tough. Oh, at this time, this was in the 80s.
And actually, you're really true, because I think in Sweden we have been doing this. There's a podcast right now which is called Genier. I don't know, it's Moa Gammel who is talking with 10. I'm one of them. So it's a bit embarrassing to say this, but I think it's really
Also, the title is translated to geniuses. So.
Yeah. But it's really fantastic names that she's been interviewing or having a conversation with, like Märta Tikkanen, who is a fantastic author and was in the 70s making a book that made everyone really, really angry, especially in Finland, where she comes from. And she said that in Finland by the 70s there were nothing about gender. So Sweden has really been going in the front line with that. And I really feel sort of embarrassed actually, because what I do now for the Film Institute is not it's us. We are 100 people working there, and I think that of course the agenda putting the gender issue is differently high, but it's quite high for everyone. And what I do as well is just I've sharpened the way of expressing what I think is important, but I really continue what Åse Kleveland did in the beginning of the 2000th century, and then continued by Cissi Elvin, who there are 2 female directors. They didn't want to say that they were feminists either, and they didn't want to say that they wanted to quote, or they didn't quote us. Mm-hmm. But they started off these gender programs that 3 out of 4 directors that won all the prizes the last couple of 4 years, they took part of one of their programs. Mm-hmm. So it's been, in Sweden, we've had the fortunate situation that we've had some women in that position, and I'm just doing what they did. So it's really, you really have to see that it's about politics, of course, but it has changed during the years, so it's not as political any longer, and I think that's a good way. I think that feminism is not about politics; it's about human rights.
Right.
Yes.
And I agree with you.
And but I still think it's been very hard. I've been proposing women portraits to television many times, and not any women. For example, Kerstin Thorvall, who was one of my friends, my grandmother, who wrote 60 books. She was one of the best-selling authors in Sweden in the 30s, in the 40s, and one of the most talked about at that time. Television refused at that time. So I think that many women, including myself, has gone through terribly hard times for not, I mean, I could write a book about and I was fighting. I got to know at the AFI, I got to know Viveka Lindfors, and I got to be a very good friend with her, and I proposed television at this time, and it was terrible. They said,
I'm sorry. Do you have a question that will
yes.
this?
No, I just want to say that it hasn't been so easy, really.
I don't think anyone has claimed that it was an easy road.
So and that's what I tried to express, that I'm really grateful for the work that you did, and a lot of you did, and that things has changed really a lot.
Yes,
Dagmar,
I did actually. I don't know if my question was, because I really agree with you on the aspect of role models, the importance of role models you have, that you see, and not just one role model that you often use, but we have a woman, but a spectrum of role models. But if you start to dig into history, not just if you talk about film, but there was a very striking example in Sweden about a history book in music industry, for example, where they were all about men, there were no women, and then a lot of, I'm sure the majority of you know about this, but all the women had been excluded in the music history. And if you look into film, for example, there's this woman, I can't remember her name, but there was like silent film French director in the US.
Alice Guy Blaché.
Exactly. And so there are all these people who've, as you were saying, that paved the way already. There's so many women who've done so many things, and they're just written out of history so many times. And how do we
Write them back?
I can tell you.
How do we bring them back, and how do we make
We
sure
do
that they're
that
not
now in
Exactly.
Sweden. We do that with the Nordic Women Film, which is a site that we will put all female in the key positions of filming, directing, script writing, producing, and editing. And we will do it's a role model that we have, which is Nordic women literature that Ebba Witt-Brattström did for all the female writers. So we do that, and we are fighting to make it a Nordic thing, but if we don't succeed with that, we'll do a Swedish at least. So we will always have the list, and all the new things will be able to be added. So it takes some time, because it's a lot of research, because they are forgotten and they don't exist for many. So we need to have the film science people working with us, which we have, unfortunately.
It has just got started. One of my colleagues, Ingrid Stigsdotter, is on it, and Kajsa Hedström from the Film Archive, and Tutti Soila from Stockholm University. So that's actually getting started right now, and that would be an amazing platform, I guess. And there's another international research thing called the Women on the Silent Screen, with regular meetings and publications. So there is quite a lot of these things going on, and hopefully it will be more.
Can I say something? I think it's also about, encouraging young women already in school by getting this information, because it's about self-confidence. To take that as much space as men in a room, and because I have something to say to you, Hannah, because I heard once Baker, who's one of the film financiers he said that we get is it 40% appliances from women and 60, and we try to give out money the same way. Is that correct, or is it 1/3?
I think that he didn't say. I don't think he meant what he said in that sense.
No.
Because we're trying to count, and we don't know really, but it's definitely less female directors from the applicants, and we cannot sort of over-give money, which can turn out that it will be only 40% female directors. But it's at the same time, we now counted for 2013. And if you do not count the automatic schemes, which we can't control, so that's out, our commissioners actually gave 53% of their money to female directors.
Yes, but that's smaller films. But
no.
Is it not?
No, I don't think you should minimize them to be smaller films. Those are the most quality films, and sometimes really big films. But still, so
What I wanted to say was not at all that discussion.
okay.
I'm sorry that I gained into it. I wanted to say that I think, that that is less female directors applying has to do with the self-confidence that we're sort of brought up with, and when do we dare to apply for these films? Because when you asked for only female directors to apply for a certain project that you had a couple of years ago, you got hundreds of them. So they're out there. Isn't that true?
I mean,
it's just a question.
I don't think. I mean, I'm sure that the self-confidence is a very big thing, because we always get to hear you're not good enough and he is really great. But the ones that apply for our money is usually a director and a producer. So it's the producer that finds the director. And
it's an earlier
suddenly,
stage,
when we had the Rookie project and we said, that was a quota. That was only for female directors. Suddenly, the producers found the female directors that they dared to apply with.
So it comes a little bit earlier there.
I mean, it's not that
That's
easy.
very clarifying. I was wondering about that. Thank you.
So on that note of self-confidence, sisterhood, and whatnot, I would like to thank the panel for joining me on stage and allowing me to interject a few of my own thoughts. And I would like to thank you all for coming. And I think this is all going to be filmed. I don't know if it's going to be posted for viewing later. Ellen? Yeah. So tell all of your friends who did not have the good taste to be here that they should watch this later over and over and over. So a round of applause for Ellen and the panel.